Today we had the 12th meeting of the GST Council, and the residuary items with regard to the legislative exercise were on before the GST Council. As you know that we have in the past meetings already approved the CGST law, the IGST law and the compensation laws. Today's agenda predominantly was the SGST law and the UT, that's the Union Territory GST law. The officers had already done the groundwork for this. Both these drafts had been circulated, and the 12th meeting today approved the SGST law and the UT GST law. Because of this approval and cross references, some changes were required, which were really changes to bring all laws in conformity and consistency, were required in the earlier laws which we had approved. And those were also discussed, and those changes were also approved to the earlier laws. So the Council now has granted its formal approval to all the 5 legislations, that is the CGST, IGST, SGST, compensation and the UT GST law. So all these laws now stand approved by the Council. 4 of these laws, CGST, IGST, UTGST and compensation law, will be required to be passed by the Central Parliament. So in the first instance, these laws under the Constitution Amendment approved by the Cabinet, by the GST Council, will now be taken to the Cabinet, and after the Cabinet's formal approval, they will be introduced in the Lok Sabha. We'll try and do that expeditiously. The SGST law now will be taken by the respective state governments through its cabinet to the respective state assemblies. That also the states, I'm sure, will be doing it quite expeditiously. Having finished the legislative exercise, there are 2 important acts which remain. One is the formulation of the rules. Now there are 9 sets of rules and regulations which were to be approved. The law relating to registration, payment, refunds, invoices, returns have already been approved. That is, these 5 regulations or rules have already been approved. There are 4 others which now require a formal approval. These relate to composition, valuation, ITC, and the transitions. Now, when these 4 are approved, in view of the legislations which have been approved, some marginal corrections will be required to be done to the regulations which we have already approved. For that purpose, the Officers Committee would be sending us by the next weekend the final draft of the 4 balance regulations and the corrections, if any, to the earlier regulations. To consider that and approve that, we'll be meeting in Delhi again for the 13th meeting of the GST Council on the 31st of March at 5 p.m. After these rules are approved, one major action will be required, which is with regard to the fitment of various commodities into the tax slabs. The officers would then be working on it, and in the meeting that is held thereafter, we'll be approving the slabs. Once that is done, we'll be ready for the GST implementation. Hopefully, we intend to immediately after 31st March, once the rules are approved, take up the exercise of fitment of the slabs itself at the next meeting itself. So we will have a sufficient buffer in terms of time between the entire preparatory exercise and the 1st of July, which is tentatively the date fixed for implementation. Thank you.
1 जुलाई अब मान के चला जाए कि सर सारी दिक्कतें जो थी, सारी जो जरूरतें थी वो खत्म हो गई है और 1 जुलाई
देखिए ऐसा लगता है क्योंकि अभी तक जो प्रोग्रेस है वो ठीक दिशा में चल रहा है. No, we can take it up even before that. Both Parliament and that exercise is completely independent. These are rules to be framed under those acts. So these are drafts which have been prepared.
So the next cabinet meeting, we can expect these laws to be taken up and then further in the Parliament?
We'll see now which cabinet meeting.
So there was also talk about capping cess on the compensation. Was there any clarity on that?
You see, yes, what we have done is that on the in the draft of the compensation law, the capping of the cess has been done, and we followed a principle. And you must keep in mind that these are not the actual cess charges; these are only the caps. Take, for example, luxury cars. If 28% is the tax and the current tax is 40%, तो tax cess तो 12% लगेगा. Lekin for the purposes of empowerment, we've kept a cap of 15 on the cess, even though we may end up only imposing 12%. So cap is the ceiling. So we've kept a little headspace between what we intend doing and what we, not an extraordinary headspace, but only a marginal headspace.
Sir, tax slabs could also come up for discussion in the March 31st.
No, they won't. Thank you.
The caps will be applicable on all the goods, sir?
No, the cess will be only on those goods which are going to be used for the purposes, since cess is going to go to the compensation fund. Those 4 or 5 commodities.